Support for Consider This is provided by Sequent Planning, an SEC-registered investment advisor, helping people make informed retirement income decisions. Additional information is available at sequentomaha.com.
From the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
Today's question, what is Medicare and how do I use it? The simple answer is it's government-sponsored health care for seniors and the disabled. First created in 1965, Medicare was designed to provide medical coverage to people on Social Security. It's often confused with Medicaid, which was created to provide medical care for those in poverty, but they're not the same thing. Medicare works a lot like health insurance, except the government is the one reimbursing doctors and hospitals, not a private insurance company. You become eligible for Medicare when you turn 65, if you're medically disabled before age 65, or if you have permanent kidney failure requiring dialysis or a transplant. Medicare is divided into several parts simply known as Part A, Part B, Part C, and Part D. Medicare Part A is similar to health insurance that covers you against hospitalization due to catastrophic events. It can also help cover a skilled nursing facility, hospice, and home health care if certain conditions are met. Medicare Part B provides coverage for medically necessary services such as outpatient care and doctor services. Part B also helps cover some preventive services to help maintain your health and to keep certain illnesses from getting worse. Medicare Part C, otherwise known as a Medicare Advantage plan, is another way to get benefits. It combines Part A, Part B, and sometimes Part D coverage and is managed by private insurance companies approved by Medicare. These plans must cover medically necessary services. Part C is more cost-effective and often offers better benefits than having Part A and Part B together, even if you supplement A and B with additional coverage. However, plans can charge different copays, coinsurance, or deductibles for the services they offer. Medicare Part D provides prescription drug coverage. This coverage may help lower prescription drug costs and helps protect against higher costs in the future.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, Medicare, hospital to nursing home. Joining us to talk more about it is Stacy Hallberg. Stacy is a senior living advisor for A Place for Mom. She's here today drawing from her experiences as a licensed nurse practitioner in a nursing home environment. Thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Let's set the stage a little bit, Stacy. How do you define our aging population?
Traditionally, the aging population is anybody who is 65 or older. We are seeing today 10,000 people turning 65 every day in the United States. It is projected by 2035 that will be one of the largest population groups in the United States. There's a lot of things that contribute to that. Those 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every day, and then you have longer life expectancies.
Okay, and so with those longer life expectancies may come the chance or an increased chance in going to the hospital. What are some of the more common reasons that people are hospitalized?
There's a lot of reasons that people go to the hospital. Some of the common illnesses or injuries that we see are cardiac arrhythmias, congestive heart failure or CHF, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. Could be an injury like a fall or a fracture, pneumonia, dehydration. Another common one that we see is mismanaged medications, which can lead to the exacerbation of a disease process.
Okay, and oftentimes prior to that admission into the hospital, we go to the emergency room. Paint a picture of that environment, mindful of that older adult and maybe a person or two with them. What is that like?
So when somebody has an injury or an illness and they go to the emergency room, one of two things happens. They're going to be triaged, assessed, diagnostic testing will be done, and they will be treated and discharged from the hospital, or they will be admitted into the hospital for further observation or treatment.
Okay, and oftentimes that individual may not be in a place where they can speak for him or herself, and there would be a power of attorney with them. Talk about that briefly and the importance of that person.
So the power of attorney acts as an advocate to make healthcare decisions for an individual who is hospitalized. Power of attorney is typically durable, meaning that it is not activated until a person can no longer make decisions for themselves. That can be for psychological reasons, cognitive reasons, or they are incapacitated in another way that they no longer have the ability to make their healthcare decisions. So at that time, the healthcare power of attorney comes in and they will make decisions based on the plan of care, diagnosis, treatment of that individual.
Okay, and what if that older adult doesn't have a power of attorney? Maybe it's the daughter or the son coming in. I think it's very important that we let folks know what can happen if you don't have that legal representation behind you.
So if there is no power of attorney in place, those decisions typically will fall to the next of kin, a spouse, an adult child, niece, nephew, grandchild. If that person does not have next of kin, or next of kin does not want to take responsibility for those decisions, a guardian can be appointed to make decisions for this person. In the interim, medical professionals are going to do everything in their power to provide life-sustaining treatments and interventions.
Okay, and is there anything, as all this communication is going on prior to an admission, is there anything that people should know to ask before the decision is made to bring them upstairs, or whatever the case may be? Any questions that we should be thinking about?
I think one of the most important questions to ask with regard to Medicare coverage is, if they are being admitted, is that going to be an inpatient admission or an observation admission? Because that is going to determine how Medicare is going to cover that hospital stay. So if somebody is being admitted, people just assume that that's inpatient. If it is inpatient, their Medicare Part A benefits will cover that hospital stay, the fees for the room, the treatments, medications, any services provided. If the person is in observation, simply put, that means they are not sick enough to be admitted as inpatient status, but they're not well enough to go home for whatever reason. They are then in observation, and their Medicare Part B is covering that stay. The coverage is the same as it would be as outpatient. So observation is considered an outpatient stay. So medications that you're receiving would go through your Medicare Part D program. You would have co-pays for procedures, doctor's visits, and those kinds of things.
And how important is it that somebody gets the answer to that question? I mean, oftentimes, Stacy, people are running around in the ER, and you'll ask a professional, hey, what's going on here? Well, I don't have that answer, but I'll find somebody. And before you know it, they're up in the room, right? So is there a specific person that someone should be asking, to visit with, or how? I mean, it's important.
Generally, that would be the role of the social worker in the hospital. Emergency departments usually have a social worker that can answer insurance questions. And if they are admitted inpatient, same, the social worker would be able to answer those questions. Okay,
so we've made the decision that the loved one is going to be admitted into the hospital, and maybe it's inpatient, right? So we've determined that. And now there's talk, based on why they were admitted into the hospital, about the possibility of going to a nursing home. What should family and friends start thinking about the moment that is mentioned?
So when it is recommended that somebody goes to a nursing home for skilled nursing services, nursing care, physical, occupational, sometimes speech therapy, the family is not given a lot of time. Sometimes it's a day or 2 days, and there are a lot of things that need to be done in that time period, and they just don't know where to begin. So it usually starts with the hospital social worker giving them a list of facilities in their area. And they're asked to narrow down that list to their top 3 to 5 options, so that the hospital can start sending out referrals for the evaluation and determination process by the skilled nursing. Also during that period, you want to make sure that you have all of the documentation that's going to be needed when they're admitted into skilled nursing. That can be their power of attorney, their living will, their insurance cards. Start packing a bag, typically 5 outfits, toiletries, comfort items, books, because that move happens so quickly.
And for people who are watching and haven't experienced this, when you say a list, right, so it's important that we get into the mindset of the people in the hospital, right? You're worried about your loved one, you're thinking about work, your mind is going in a million different places, and then you get this list. So from a proactive standpoint, what would be your suggestion to families watching right now who aren't in this boat to make sure that they stay ahead of the curve?
Do your research. Don't wait until you're in a crisis situation. If you are in the hospital and you're given that list is just the name of the community, the address, and the phone number. There is no other information provided on these communities. So how do you make the decision? So the families need to do research. Unfortunately, the social workers cannot make recommendations or give their opinions. So Medicare.gov has a nursing home compare. Families can go on, look at the CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, 5-star rating. They rate the communities based on their quality measures, their staffing, and their health inspections. So that's a really good place to start. The other thing I highly, highly recommend is touring the communities, getting a good feel for what it is, asking specific questions about their loved one, their diagnosis, and their treatment plan. So talk to the therapist, ask what specific therapy they will be receiving. What are their outcomes with somebody with Parkinson's, for example, because some communities specialize in different disease processes. Talk to the nursing care about their capabilities in treating wounds or any other clinical treatments that their loved one might need.
Yeah, and in this day and age, it's not enough just to have a plan A. You should have a plan B and a plan C, because you may have done your homework and then you pick up the phone and that community doesn't have an opening. And then your time's still ticking and you've got to be out at a certain, right? So maybe have a plan B and a plan C in place as well. So let's talk about the criteria. If someone is going to be covered under Medicare, there are certain things that have to happen. So we're going to put up a graphic for our viewers, and as we do that, if you could just walk us through adding any comments that you may have.
Sure. So in order for Medicare to cover a skilled nursing home stay, an individual has to have been admitted inpatient status for 3 days in the hospital. That is 3 midnights in the hospital. A doctor certifies that there is a need for skilled nursing care, so he will write an order to be admitted to skilled nursing. The reason for admission to the skilled nursing community or the nursing home has to be the same as the hospital admission reason. The individual will receive skilled nursing and rehab services on a daily basis. Typically, rehab services are 5 to 6 days per week. And while they are in rehab, they have to be showing signs of improvement.
Okay, so let's kind of break this down a little bit. When we talk about the doctor certifying, one of the comments that you'll hear families making is, I never really saw the doctor. So if that person is making the decision, how important is it that the individual and or family are able to really visit to find out what he or she is thinking in terms of their determination?
Yeah, I think it's important. You know, the patient is always seeing the doctor in the hospital. They're doing their evaluations. A lot of times the doctor writes the order based on therapy recommendations. Therapy will do an evaluation and some treatment. If there is a decline in their level of functioning or a need for therapy, that's where that recommendation comes in. If the family has concerns and they're not hearing rehab or skilled nursing, that might be a really good time to request to talk to the physician and or therapist, social workers, and determine if there is a need for skilled nursing care.
Okay, so in listening to you, I think sometimes when families are going to the hospital, they have certain time frames with which they're able to work. And I think in the hustle and bustle of all of it, it can be so confusing. So talk to those folks out there who are watching and thinking, I'd love to talk to the doctor, but they tell me that he or she is only there at 6 a.m. Or I tried to track down the social worker and I wasn't able to do it. I mean, you've got to be determined, understanding though that you're there because your loved one is in a place that you wouldn't want them. So how can they approach that? How are they able to just persevere and make sure that they're getting the answers they need without feeling defeated?
The social worker is a good person. If they can get in contact, that's usually in a hospital setting the family's go-to person. They're directing the care or coordinating with all of the different disciplines, discharge planning. So that person can usually answer most of the questions if the family cannot get in contact with the doctor.
Okay, and to hit the inpatient versus observation, right? Somebody could be in the hospital for 6 days and the assumption might be, we qualify. Talk a little bit about, again, why that may not be the case.
Yeah, many times people assume because they are spending the night at the hospital that they are qualifying with that 3-day qualified stay for skilled nursing. Medicare has specific guidelines and criteria that qualify somebody for inpatient status. So, for example, if somebody fractures an ankle, and that is casted, they could be discharged home, but maybe they don't have the care services, but they don't meet criteria. It was not surgical. They don't meet criteria for inpatient status. So somebody can remain in the hospital for several days and not be inpatient.
Okay, and I want to then go over the reason for admission to the hospital must be the same as the reason for the admission to the nursing home, skilled nursing. And I point that out because with older adults, often things can just go awry. I mean, it could be a snowball effect. They're admitted for one thing and then something else comes along. So talk a little bit about maybe questions or things that people should be asking just to clarify and make sure that what is needing to occur is.
So what that means is when somebody is admitted to the hospital, I'll use the example of a fall. They come in to the emergency department, they had a fall, and they're losing strength. While they went in for the fall, maybe later were diagnosed with a pneumonia. So that qualifies them to be admitted inpatient, meaning that the pneumonia caused that weakness, caused the decline in strength, and that then would qualify them for skilled nursing. So the admitting diagnosis for skilled nursing would not be that fall, not what brought them into the hospital, it would be that diagnosis of pneumonia.
Okay, and once they are in the nursing home environment, there are meetings to be had and people with whom you can communicate, right? So who's the point person there, Stacy, in terms of families being able to say, okay, are we still meeting all of this? How does that all shake out?
Usually there is a care plan meeting. The care plan meeting is an interdisciplinary team meeting with the family, with the resident receiving the skilled services, the social worker, nursing, therapy, dietitian, could be activities, and everybody comes together and talks about the plan of care, goals of care, discharge planning recommendations, clinical treatments that are being administered. And that's a really great time to bring up questions, concerns, because you have all of the different team members there. Typically that care plan meeting is done within the first week, usually days of admission, and then subsequent meetings will be had if need be.
Okay, all right. And families can always make the decision, even if it's determined that Medicare is no longer going to cover, they could always opt to have their loved ones stay there and pay privately, just kind of as a little bit of a buffer to make sure that their loved one is doing as well as they would like them to before they would leave. Is that
Correct.
Also the case. Okay. The final is the showing signs of improvement. And I know that's hard for some people to understand, and often they can get upset with the nursing home. It's not their decision to make, correct? So it's Medicare. So talk a little bit more about that showing signs of improvement.
So Medicare covers up to 100 days of skilled therapy, skilled rehab. That does not mean that they will cover a full 100 days. Medicare covers until that person has met their goals and is at their previous level of functioning. So where they were before their illness, before the hospital, before skilled nursing, or as long as they are progressing. If somebody is making progress and then starts to plateau and they are no longer making progress, Medicare will discontinue coverage at that time.
Okay, and you were talking, we'll put up a graphic for our viewers that actually shows the number of days that Medicare will cover and then when co-insurance kind of comes into play. So briefly walk us through anything other than what you've said that would be important to note here.
Sure. So for the first 20 days in a skilled nursing facility or nursing home, Medicare is going to cover that at 100%. That is going to be the fees for their room, meals, therapy, medications, treatments, nursing care. If somebody requires therapy after 20 days, you go into co-insurance. Co-insurance for 2019 is $170.50 per day. Some people have a Medicare supplement plan. That supplement plan may cover some or all of the co-insurance, and Medicare covers the rest.
Okay, wonderful. Now, if you have a loved one and you're getting the word that Medicare will no longer apply, you can appeal that decision, right? So talk to us about the Medicare appeal process in terms of what we're discussing today.
So when Medicare makes the determination that coverage will end, the family will be issued a Medicare denial letter. If they disagree, and during that time they will be given the option to appeal that denial. So if the family feels like there is still room for improvement and that their loved one is making progress, they can file an appeal. The social worker or designee will be able to help them. Nursing and therapy will get together the needed documentation to submit. That information is submitted to a QIC, or a qualified independent contractor. So it is not Medicare making that decision. It is not the skilled nursing facility making that decision. It is an independent contractor. They will review the documentation and make a determination as to whether or not Medicare will continue coverage.
Wow, and so you say there is help for families, so if they want to go to the social worker, because oftentimes people may not know what to ask in terms of being able to appeal that decision, right? Okay. Hindsight always 20/20 in the world of aging. In all of your experiences, Stacy, all the places you've been, all the people you've seen, what seems to be the most common either mistake or misunderstanding that people have when it comes to Medicare?
I don't know that it's necessarily a mistake, but like you said, we don't know what we don't know. It's ignorance. People don't understand the coverage. They don't understand the hospital process. So understanding, what they need, plans of care, goals of care, what's going to be covered, and what questions to ask.
Okay, and so curiously after this interview, how did you get into this whole realm? I mean, what brought you into the older adult realm? And yeah, so
I started working at a skilled nursing facility as a nurse. I didn't think I would be working with older adults, and day one it became my passion. I started 13 years ago. I have worked in different capacities with seniors and their families, and have just become so passionate about being an advocate and educating seniors and their families, because there is so much that people don't understand and don't know.
Yeah, and so in a couple of minutes that we have remaining, and I know this is hospital to nursing home, but often you leave the nursing home back to your assisted living environment or even your home, and you might continue to receive some therapies. Just briefly, what does Medicare, or does Medicare cover any of that?
So when somebody is discharging from a skilled nursing or even a hospital, if they had a 3-day qualifying hospital stay and they're going home health care can come in and provide therapy and nursing services as needed. It will not be as intense. If somebody does go to skilled nursing and is then discharging home, Medicare Part B will cover continued therapy. So the point of therapy in the skilled nursing environment is to improve. The point of therapy with home health is to maintain so that they don't just start losing that strength again. So Medicare Part B will cover therapy and nursing care after skilled nursing for a period of time.
I think that's really important for people to note, and even more so that there are folks around who want to help. And I think in defense of the social workers out there, they are just doing so much in so little time. So just, try to be patient, try to be understanding, have your questions together, and if you're needing help, certainly reach out to somebody like yourself to get that help. I want to put up a website for viewers for today's program so that if they want more information, this is loaded with it. You can go into the website, and then there are lots of areas to explore. Medicare.gov. Stacey, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your time, your expertise, stories. Keep doing what you're doing and advocating for those older adults. Best wishes to you.
Thank you.
You bet. And thanks to our students who are working so hard behind the scenes, and of course, all of you for watching. As we close, a trip to Cambridge Oaks in Omaha as seen through the lens of Corey Osborne, a junior at UNO. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at netnebraska.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.
Support for Consider This is provided by Sequent Planning, an SEC-registered investment advisor, helping people make informed retirement income decisions. Additional information is available at sequentomaha.com.